Hey there friends, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is a part of a YouTube hop with a bunch of talented crafters that all love lawn fawn. I'm going to have more of that information down below in my description box, but let's talk about what we're going to be using today. I have the Lawn Fawn Lovable Legends stamp and die set, and I'm going to be pairing that up with the Magic Iris die. So we were challenged to come up with a spring card, and I thought this would be kind of fun to use these two products together. So we'll get started with doing some ink blending, and I have this sped up crazy fast, like 4 times. And this is just on some Bristol smooth cardstock that is cut down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it's a little bit smaller than an A2 size card. And I started off with some peeled paint, and then I moved on to squeezed lemonade, and then I moved on to dried marigold, and I'm just blending in between to make sure that those are good and blended. And then my final color up on top is going to be tumbled glass. It is pretty obvious that I need to put on my wish list the tumbled glass Distress Oxide re-inker. My goodness, I use that one like crazy. And you'll see I have a smaller panel. This is about a 4x4 panel. I am going to line that up and just try to match up my colors, and you'll see why I do this later. I end up needing this for one of the parts of the Magic Iris, and I want there to be a little bit of cohesion between all the pieces. So we'll blend that back and forth, and that matches pretty decently. All right, so we'll clean up our mess, and then we'll move on, and let me show you what pieces we need. So I've got this down to normal speed. You're going to need 3 pieces that look like this. I call this the balloon animal piece. I think it's called the sausage piece by some of those at Lawn Fawn. Then you're going to need one of those tab pieces. You're going to need 3 of the donuts, but one of those donuts you're going to cut that little, I like to call that the hurricane piece from, like, you know, because it reminds me of watching the Weather Channel and the hurricane going across the screen. Anyway, so you'll need one of those hurricane pieces to go over the top. You'll need 1 tab, and then you'll need 3 of these like rectangular tabs that have curved edges. And then those are the pieces that you will need. So let's move on to ink blending. I did ink blend the 3 balloon pieces just with that tumbled glass. You could go fancy and try and do it to match your background perfectly, but I just didn't have the patience for that. So let's put it together. I've done this before. If you've been to my channel before, you've seen me do this, but I'm going to have this slowed down because it is a little bit of a process and there are steps to take. And typically I am not about interactive cards, but if it's easy, I will try it. So I took all of those balloon pieces and I lined those up inside the donut piece that had the notches cut out. And I'm going to take these 3/16 inch glue dots. You do need the glue dots, and 3/16 inches is the size you're going to need. So I bought the jumbo box. And the reason you need glue dots, which you will pair up onto those little X portions, is because I guess using regular glue will not work. The glue dots will allow for a little bit of movement, and if you don't have that little bit of movement, it just isn't going to work properly. I'm going to believe the experts, just so you know, because yeah, I don't really have the time or need to see if they were right or wrong. I'm just going to assume they're right, and I'll just keep using the glue dots. And so I've put the glue dot down on each one of those little X's. Now, Jennifer McGuire, when she did one of these, she used purple tape to keep all those little balloon pieces in place, because the next portion is going to take a little bit of coordination. I found that if I just do it 1 dot at a time, it's not a big deal, and I'm lazy. So I just will line up the one piece and then make sure all those other balloon pieces are lined up perfectly before I actually push down on top of the glue dot. And then you'll have it basically like a little sandwich. So those balloons are in between those 2 pieces. Flip it over, and then you're going to notice those other parts that the hurricane piece cut out. And so with those, you're going to take some 1/4 inch Scor-Tape, and you're going to go from outside or inside out with your Scor-Tape. And I'll show you up close what I'm talking about here. But you want to make sure that you're using that Scor-Tape, or just a really heavy glue. Liquid glue would work, because you don't want your mechanism to fall apart, but you're going to make sure that it goes from the inside out or outside in, or however, but you just need to make sure that that's lined up like that. You'll peel off your release paper if you are using Scor-Tape, and then you're going to take your little rectangular pieces that have the curved notches, and you're going to line that right up into that, you know, line them up to the inside center piece. And then I'm going to flip that over. All right, I do want one of those pieces to point at me, so I'm going to have one of them just pointing at me, and I'm going to take my Scor-Tape once again. I'll take this little this is the tab that will make the mechanism work. So this is what the recipient will use to actually make the iris open and close. So I'm only putting some of that Scor-Tape on the lower half of the piece, and then I'll peel off the release paper if it'll cooperate with me. And then we are going to stick that down to the mechanism. And I'm going to try to make basically like a little V with that tab that's pointing at me. And you'll see what I'm talking about. So you'll line it up to the very inside center. That's why it's curved. And you'll want to make sure that it doesn't overlap the piece that's pointing at you, but it just kind of makes a V where they meet. So there you go. Now I'll take some more of the Scor-Tape and I'm going to put it on the tabs that are sticking out. So we're just going to put that down on there. And here is where the third donut comes into play. You'll peel off all of your release paper and then you'll take that third donut and you'll set it inside there. You're just going to set it in there. That's all you got to do. But this is what's going to make the mechanism go. So then I'm going to gingerly wrap those pieces around. You don't need them to be tight. In fact, you don't want them to be tight. They're not going to go all the way to the center. They're going to go just shy of the center, because if you make them too tight, your mechanism won't go. And as you'll see, just because I'm having a hard time holding on to it the right way, but I do finally get the mechanism to go. It's just a matter of how I'm holding it. And then once I get it figured out, you can play with it a little bit. Just make sure all the pieces are working properly, which mine are. So then I'm going to set that off to the side and we'll move on to our coloring. I'm going to color the little Bigfoot from here. I've got E97. My next darkest color will be E37, and then I'm going to do E29 as my darkest shade. And I really don't have any rhyme or reason to how I'm doing this. Now, as I said, this is a part of a blog hop. There is a prize, and it's being sponsored by scrapbookpal.com. It's a great place to purchase your Lawn Fawn products and more. So leave a comment down below for your chance to win that $25 shopping spree. And also in the comment, you're going to have to let me know where you're from, because this is only open to US and Canadian residents. Sorry about that, guys. Otherwise, your shipping would just be crazy for out of the country. So anyway, all right, moving back on to our coloring. I've just gone back and I'm going to use some R32 for his little nose and bring in my E97 now that that's kind of dry, and just add a little bit more of that just to add a little bit of shading there. I'm going to put this into my MISTI, and then I'm going to line up the sentiments I want. So I've got have and then I have birthday, and then the big word, the big loopy cursive word is unbelievable. So I'll stamp that down using my Raven Detail ink, which is what I stamped my Bigfoot down with. I'll use the matching die, tape that down and in place, and then I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine. For those of you that are interested, I did stamp this onto some Express It cardstock. And there you can see I did use my little Sizzix Sidekick. Haven't brought that puppy out in a while. But I did also now, as you just could tell, I did some ink blending on the bottom of that piece using some peeled paint, because I want to stamp out my trees. I want to add a little bit of interest to the background. So I'm just stamping the trees that are in that stamp set over the top using some Forest Moss is the color. It's a little bit darker green. So I was very sporadic with those. And then on that piece that I sponged, the smaller piece, I did have those spread out because I want to die cut those out. Those are going to go just for a little bit more added interest, and you'll see what I'm talking about later. So I will cut those out using my die cutting machine along with the matching dies and some purple tape. And now I am going to cut down my sentiments just using my guillotine trimmer. And I'm just lining those up in there, just trying to make sure there's as straight as possible. And then when those are all ready to go, we'll start considering how our mechanism is going to go on there. Now, you'll notice that I don't mess it up because I think about it ahead of time. But because I have that piece that is ink blended, and I did cut that out using the donut, I am just going to glue that onto the front. But before I do it, I want to double check and make sure that I have my mechanism right, and I didn't. So I'm glad I checked. You want that mechanism to be up at the upper right-hand corner. And so now I'll just glue that down, and as I said, I just put glue all over that donut. It is not going to affect the mechanism, but here on the back, it will affect it. I did push in my tabs because those can show otherwise, so I just folded them down. And then I'm going to take a little bit of foam tape and I'm going to put that just on the part where I had the wraparound tab. So I'm only using 3 pieces of foam tape to hold this in place. Foam tape wouldn't even be necessary, but I used a heavier weight cardstock, so I want to, you know, that Bristol Smooth. So I wanted to make sure that I did that correctly, and I don't want it to get caught, is what I'm talking about. Those little tabs can sometimes get caught. So I'm going to also use my bone folder to make sure that those are down nice and tight. All right, and then I'll just line this up and then push it down. So there we go. And once it's open, it looks really cute, like everything was blended together. And you'll see what I'm talking about with the balloon pieces. You could go all fancy and try and make those match your background as well, but I just went ahead and did the tumble glass, which is what I'm going to do here with my little arrow tab. So I decided to go ahead and sponge that in that tumble glass as well. I'm going to leave the center open so that the little white peeks through, but I'm going to use my liquid glue and adhere this down to the tab that's sticking out. It's just a little decorative piece that lets the recipient know exactly how to work this mechanism. So the tab will be up and closed, and then they'll know that they have to pull it down. I wanted some splatter, and so I used some peeled paint distress oxide spray, and I thought at this point I had ruined it, but that's how my morning was going, I'm telling you. So I pulled it out and I thought, well, we're not restarting this, so we're just going to go with it. And so I heat set that just to kind of, and because it's distress oxide, they kind of subdue themselves back. And I actually really ended up liking this. I'm going to glue my sentiments down to the front. I don't want those to be very straight. I'm just kind of putting those on there a little bit wonky. And then I'll also put down the trees that I had stamped and cut out. So that adds a little bit of cohesion from the trees in the background to the trees that are now on the front of my magic iris. And then I put 2 on one side and 3 on another, and then I will put down birthday at the very bottom. So it'll say, have an unbelievable birthday. And now we'll move on to our card base, which is actually some Not Your Mama's heavyweight cardstock. This is a 130-pound weight, so it's very, very heavy, and I love that. I'm going to stamp the inside with my sentiment that says, you're a legend. And then I'll take the little Bigfoot feet and some brushed corduroy, and I'll stamp those across the whole card. Well, not the whole card. I just do the lower left and the upper right. And then I'm going to use some liquid glue to adhere down my card panel to my card base. And I got to tell you, when I started, this wasn't turning out how I wanted it, but now I love it. So there we go, just opening it up. How happy does that make you? It makes me happy, even though I had a crazy morning. This just makes me happy to open and close that. So as I said, this is a part of a video hop. I will have the next hop, or the next stop in the hop, down below in my description box. So be sure to head down there and check out all the information and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I would love to know if you'd be willing to give the Magic Iris a try. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye, everybody.